Hello and welcome back to Dreary Middle: the podcast. Last week we talked about 2.0. This week we're talking about 3.0. Can you see the trend? So, Final Fantasy XIV 3.0 Heavensward is a, as I've been reliably informed, it's not Heavensward, it's Heavensward.
What?
So 3.0 takes off immediately from the end of 2.0.
Yeah.
You've been banished from Eorzea because, quite frankly, you're wanted for regicide, which is not exactly the smallest of crimes. So you flee to Camp Dragonhead and you plead with a Horshafont to let you in. You're like, please,
please let us in. Oh, please.
And Alphino, he's literally crying because, you know,
He's on the verge.
he literally killed the queen. Kind of cringe.
Uh-oh.
So anyway, there's some backwards and forwards, and finally you're let in, but it's not, it's not without. Then the story starts off a bit higgledy-piggledy. It's not really clear what's going on, but you're basically sent around the world to go and sent around the lands of Ishgar to see what's going on. Then you and Alphino leave to go and find Roban from 3.0. And this is actually a plot point that I will agree. Clement, in his video, this is the second time we've referenced this video, but it was one I watched recently about 14, and I disagree with a lot of it. But I agree with this point specifically. The conclusion of the Roban story is kind of like underwhelming.
Oh yeah.
Because in case you're not aware, in the lead up to 3.0, they always do like a little movie that they put before the games, or like where it's like a CG trailer set to a bit of music that kind of hypes you up for the next patch. The one for 3.0 is really like Roban's in prison and what's gonna happen. Anyway, he just leaves prison because someone lets him out, and they're just like, it's Papashan. I think Papashan, it just literally comes up to him and is just like, yeah, we've decided to clear you of it. Just leave.
It's
like,
the
what?
weakest part of Heavensward's narrative by far.
Just think about that. Like the person he's supposed to be protecting gets killed right under his nose by his oldest friend. Everyone suspects him of regicide alongside the signs of the Seventh Dawn. And the guy who's supposedly in charge of like planning her death and whatnot literally just comes up to you and is like, yeah, it was all a ruse. Off you go. Like, can you imagine that? If I was Roban, I'd be like, no, I'm still going to kill you.
Yeah, exactly. I guess it was the thing where he's like, well, you still saved her life, though. It's stupid. I don't know why they did that. It's like the most infuriating plot point in the series, because there was so much promise for that. Like, that should have been the secondary story of Heavensward, but it wasn't. Like, I was expecting that. And you watch the opening trailer to Heavensward, it's like the most disappointing thing, because it's like, damn, look, he's in jail. Oh no, what's gonna happen? This is epic. And then it's like, oh, it gets taken care of in like 2 missions and you're done, and Raban's fine, and there was no consequence to any of this really, except Telegi's dead. that was the only consequence. I guess the Scions are gone too.
It's such a large part as well, and Lolorito is literally just like, in the trailer, he's like, oh, I'm really evil, I'm going to make a militaristic dictatorship, and then he's just like, Roban, you're back in power, Nanamo's alright, see ya. It's just like,
if this was in any other expansion, I would have been a lot more annoyed, but thankfully everything else in Heavensward's pretty perfect, so I kind of let it slide.
I can see maybe one of the things as well is they might not have wanted it to have overshadowed the actual story of Heavensward. Like,
they shouldn't have. But I think they shouldn't have set it up. Yeah, they shouldn't have set it up then.
Yeah.
Like, what should have happened instead was that They they kill Robar just kills Telendi and Elegy for no reason, and everyone's like, yeah, because that's all that really happened at the end of it. Like, they should not have built up to it as much as they did. You can't end 2.x like that and not follow it up in a satisfying way. Obviously, they wanted to take the story in a different direction. Heavensward was good in its own way. How I would have written it, I personally would have had the Uldar uprising, the coup, take place over multiple expansions like the Garlean storyline does, where you kind of get bits and bobs and you cut back to it, and then because if they wanted to focus on Heavensward as much as they did, and then come back to it maybe in either the 3.x content or the 4.x content, because like every other plot point in 14 that's ongoing does that kind of storytelling where it's like you get bits of it, especially the Garlean storyline and the Ascian storyline, where it revisits those plot threads whenever it feels like it. And I feel like this should have been one of them. It should have been a much bigger deal than it was, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So whatever.
I think this was the first plot point where I was kind of just like,
it's one of the greatest what ifs in storytelling, along with what season 3 of Sopranos would have looked like if Olivia Soprano was alive.
Those are your two like biggest like what ifs.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's because like that stuff keeps me up at night. I'm like, what would have Sopranos season 3 looked like if Tony's mother was still alive? What would have the Uldar storyline be like if it was more fleshed out and developed? The Uldar storyline was one of the most interesting things going into 2.x, and it was one of the most interesting things coming out of 2.x. That's why I wanted to play Heavensward. It was less because of the Ishgard stuff, and it was more because of the 2.x conclusion. And I was disappointed, to say the least, but at the very least, the rest of Heavensward's amazing, so it doesn't matter, I guess. They shouldn't have set it up the way they did. As I said, I would have just changed it so that it's a plot that you keep cutting back to little small developments, because then when you look at the overall picture, you'd be like, man, that Uldar storyline took place over so many years and it was developed so well, and people would praise it instead of just being like, well, that storyline went nowhere.
Oh, that happened.
Yeah, exactly. The Scions aren't together, I guess. There's that too. I mean, thankfully it happened because the Scions aren't in this expansion, which is probably why I like it so much. I mean, remember, at this point, I still didn't like the Scions, so Heavensward's cast of characters was a big change of pace. Because I like every character in Heavensward. Like, I think this cast of characters is like so great, and it's really the only time the series kind of deviates from the Scions, because I think each one has a focus on some kind of Scion member in one way or another. Obviously, you have Alphino in this one too, and Alphino's at his best in this one. But
he technically is a member of the Scions at this point. So.
But you have so many interesting side characters in this one too. Obviously, Estinian is like top 3 characters in the entirety of Final Fantasy XIV. Sir Emmerich is a great character. His father's a great villain. Nidhogg and his brother are both great characters, and the lore surrounding them is like some of the best lore in 14. Like, I love their backstory so much. Like, every character in 14 was like a home run. They knocked the ball out of the park with that. I was so happy that I kind of went from not liking any of the characters to pretty much liking every character in the game. And I've always been more of a character-driven person than a story-driven person in narratives. So when you have an interesting cast like the one you have in Heavensward, it elevates the entire story for me. Looking on paper, the entirety of Heavensward, it's a pretty simple story. A bunch of guys go together to fight a dragon. You know, like, that's like the simplistic version of it. But when you add the complex characters, and when you add like the dynamics they have and the development Alphino goes through, you're taking that story and you're making it amazing. And that's just how I feel about Heavensward in a nutshell. So yeah, that's kind of where that's kind of where I was with the cast at this point. Like, super into the cast of Heavensward. Didn't like the Scions. I was genuinely dreading their return.
Wow.
I knew, like, when Ida and Thancred came back, I was not going to be happy.
Papalymo, though.
Yeah, I did miss him. He was the one I missed the most from 2.0.
Well, anyway, let's save that for when we get back to them, because I know you're gonna have stuff to say about them coming back. Because remember, the circumstances around them coming back is a bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially Papalymo and Ida, they're really big leading into the 4.0 story. Anyway, so you leave Ralban to, I don't know, go and like not be sad anymore.
He got over it pretty quickly, all things considered. But
Alphinaud is like, Lady Iceheart, she's got to be the key to ending the war between the Ishgards and the dragons, because it's at a boiling point. They're both going to kill each other very soon if we don't stop it. And this is where you kind of like, if you haven't been doing the Dragoon storyline, this is the first time you're properly introduced to Estinian, who, as you might remember, at this point has one of Nidhogg's eyes, Nidhogg being like the biggest, baddest dragon.
Yeah, exactly. And like, that's another one, like Estinian, because I play Dragoon. And Estinian, like Alphinaud's, kind of an unlikable prick before, like, when he's introduced. But I'm happy they ended up turning him around into one of the best characters in the series. But it was nice, it was rewarding, I thought, when I played the Dragoon quest, and it ended up being, like, so important in Heavensward. I was like, oh, damn, like, that's Estinian. Like, when I first saw Estinian come back in Heavensward, I was like, whoa, that was important. And, like, he remembered my character, and I was like, that's amazing. So, good for me, I guess.
Did you clap? Did you clap?
I did, because I liked Estinian by the end of those quests. I hate Estinian before, like, during those quests, because he's a cocky prick who doesn't like you. That's like all his character is. And then, like, they actually add some depth to him, and instead he becomes kind of like more of a revenge, is it revenge driven, would you say?
Yeah, it very much
kind
is.
Of like, kind of in the way of like the story of like Moby Dick, where like he got so consumed with hunting the whale that it kind of consumed him. It's kind of going for a similar thing, but those are always interesting stories to me. Like, I always like watching characters lust for revenge so much where it clouds their judgment, and it's the most interesting thing to me about Heavensward as a whole, among a plethora of interesting plot points. I don't want to fanboy too much, but I love Heavensward. So,
yeah. But I mean, like, let's not forget, like, with Estinian, he is like one of the like greatest fighters in one of the best like militaries on the continent.
Yeah,
like he literally as a job kills like immortal beings. Like, I can see why he's a little bit cocky.
Yeah, sure. No, I get why he's cocky. I just didn't find him all that likable before Heavensward.
No, which is perfectly fair. I've not played the Dragoon storyline, so I don't really know like what's going on. So,
well, they turned it
point.
around. He's pretty much the Cain of this game to Final Fantasy IV, but he's more interesting than Cain, I'd say.
I liked Cain from the start. Though,
Cain is a more interesting character than Estinian at the start, but I think Estinian develops into a more interesting character than Cain by the end. Yeah, no, it's a good one. It's a good one. I mean, his design is obviously meant to be a homage to him, so because it's like borderline the same Dragoon armor. But
yeah, I think it actually is supposed to be then, because around the same time they did a bit of I remember the collector's edition for Heavensward gave you I think it was a Cain minion.
Yeah, something like that. But also, Final Fantasy XIV in general takes a lot of influence from Final Fantasy IV, wouldn't you say? like aesthetically. Like there's a lot of homages to Final Fantasy IV, I'd say, more than any other Final Fantasy game in the series, which is such a weird one to me because I like 4, but like not more than 6, 7, 9. So it's interesting that 4 gets like all the homages. Like, Endwalker is a big homage to Final Fantasy IV.
Its benchmark trailer starts off with a song from 4, so
Yep.
but like it's no big secret that the lead developer the director of 14 is a very big like Ultima Online, WoW. He's a very big fan of Western RPGs, and a lot of them take a lot of inspiration from like medieval period. And the only games from the Final Fantasy series that really go super deep into like the medieval period are like those first 4 Final Fantasy games. Once you get to like 5, 6, 7, they kind of deviate from that a bit until you get to 9 again. So I can see why they take inspiration from like 4 a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, I'm not really sure how like the airships and the hovercraft fits into like that medieval period, but
I mean, Final Fantasy's world has always been like a mix of, well, bar like the first 3, has always been like a mix of like old fantasy, like they're living in literally like there's characters you'll find like living in like straw like houses, and then it'll be like in the same world you'll get like these flying ships and these robots, and it's like, whoa, what's going on? And it's just,
well, that's one of the things in 14 is like Eorzea is very like medieval, but then like the Gallian Empire, because they don't have access to like aether and magic, they have to make up for it with technology. So it's kind of like the Eorzeans are only so technologically like behind because they have no need for it, whereas the Gallians have to have it because or else they'll be at a disadvantage. So that's why they have all the technology.
sure.
So that explains like the disparity there, and that is quite interesting. And I'm surprised they don't really do much with it. Like, why are you creating tools of destruction? It's like, because you have access to it from birth and we don't, idiot.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of interesting like world building stuff in 14 for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so you carry on in your story. You meet up with Lady Iceheart. And you find out her real name is Ysayle, and Ysayle and Estinian hate each other because one of them loves dragons and the other one doesn't, and it's all wow. It's
a great dynamic.
I absolutely agree. It's nice how they kind of like warm up to each other over like the period of the story.
And that's the thing, like you're getting, what I like about the story is not only are you getting that, but you're actually getting like conflict. And that was like my biggest issue with the Scions, is just like everyone kind of liked each other. So it was just kind of like, okay. Except like when Papalimo called Ida a moron. Which, rightfully so. She's borderline brain dead. Until you find out it's an act. And then it's like, here you actually have characters who feel like people, and they have like different like alignments, and they have like issues with each other's like method. Obviously people are going to have issues with how Estinian's doing things because he's literally like, no time for bargaining, kill, like that's his character like the entirety of Heavensward, and it's great. It's really good to watch. But Iceheart works as like a good foil to that, like, and obviously you have in the middle of this you have like Alphino, who's like he wants to, he's not like an extreme on either side. He wants to be the middle ground between the two. So you're getting like all sides of this, and obviously you have like Sir Emmerich's dad in the background being like, I'm going to kill all of you.
How could you speak up? We couldn't quite hear you.
He is admittedly like the most obvious like twist villain in the series, but you can't help but like the guy.
It's not even a twist. It's like literally the first time you're introduced to him, he has the scary music.
Yeah, it's the birth by sleep like Xehanort like thing, isn't it? Where it's like immediately he's like, hello, I'm evil. But like you can't help but like, I don't know. I think he's like really entertaining to watch with his. Well, he's not in the game much, admittedly. And that's something you just have to get used to with Final Fantasy XIV villains, except Emmett Selk, is that they don't show up much. So, I mean, I guess at this point, should we also say Xenos as well? I think he's in it enough to justify being one of the longer running villains. But yeah, you don't really get to see the villains much, unfortunately, which is a shame because they are some of the most interesting characters in 14. But they'll give you like hours and hours of Thancred though. Like he is a good character. He's not as interesting as Nidhogg, admittedly, but like again, 14 does the thing where it from Heavensward onwards, it introduces like each game had like two major villains. So, like, you know, here it'd be Nidhogg and the ruler of Ishgard, and they both serve two different kind of purposes as villains. Another example will be Emmett Selk and Vorthri in Shadowbringers. They serve two different types of purposes. Emmett Selk's meant to be the deeper, more interesting character, and Vorthri's meant to be the RPG, I am evil villain. And they both work very well in that role. And you could... Stormblood kind of does it too with Xenos and the... the evil woman, but they're both on the same side, so I guess that's but still, like they both serve two different purposes as villains. And I don't know, I actually, it kind of looks like Endwalker's going to do that too, because it's we already know one of the major villains in it, and I know that the second major villain's getting set up in Endwalker, so it will probably be doing the same thing too. They really like their duology, their double, like two different villains that serve different purposes in each expansion, and it works. Nidhogg in this game is meant to be definitely more of the, like, Nidhogg's evil, but like it comes from a place of like revenge. Nobody's going to say it was justified, but you're like, yeah, I can see why Nidhogg would want to do that. And then you have like, I am the evil bastard ruler of Ishgard, I'm just a prick. And they both work well, I think, for their intended purposes. And again, it just goes to show how great the writing in Heavensward is. They could even pull off two different villains like that in the same story.
Yeah, I agree. So I just want to take a quick detour to mention one of the minor things. You're actually introduced to the Moogles of Mogholm, and these were part of the original group who served the 12 before Good King Mogulmog broke away to lead the faction of, his faction of Muggles that went to annoy Gridania. And this is where you have to prove, and the Moogles, they're now like, we serve the dragons, but you guys are pretty cool. You have to convince them that they should actually join your side of stopping the war rather than, like, helping the dragons to continue on the war, because they're just going to end up blowing up everybody. Anyway, then you then go and meet... I'm very sorry if I'm going to, like, not pronounce this correctly, but Hrelzga?
Oh, yeah. Who cares?
And you basically go, hey, look, it's Yazael. And Hrelzga goes, nah, that's not Yazael. And you're like, oh, huh. But basically, like, it's Shiva. It's not Shiva fully reincarnated, but it's a shadow of Shiva, basically. I don't know, it's not really explained super well, but it's basically like, you might remember certain things, but you're basically no better than a clone of the original, and therefore that just makes you another human, so therefore people aren't going to listen to you.
Yeah.
And you can think about what that would do to a person if it's just like your entire life's been a lie.
Yeah, no, of course. It would be pretty whack, I guess. I can't really relate. I'm just here to, like, kill these people.
Yeah. And you're kind of introduced to, like, yeah, Saint Shiva died 1,200 years ago, and it kind of like, it created peace for 200 years. Then some people decided to come along and, like, start messing stuff up.
Yeah, as is human nature.
Yeah. So anyway, you then have to kind of like infiltrate the the area where the baby dragons are born and stuff like that. And then you have to, because you're going to take on Nidhogg. You got one of his eyes. Let's get the other one. So you have a bit of help from Sid, who hey, look, I've got this big thing. It's the mana cutter. You can go and kill, and you do. You go on. You take. He's got his big airship as well. I completely forgot. He has a huge airship. No, sorry, the Gallian Empire has a big airship, which they're using to threaten people. Let's see.
I mean, do you remember that part in Heavensward where, Varen just shows up for a bit? And
that's the bit I'm thinking.
He talks
right now.
to you, and he's like, "You better not mess with me, bro." And then he just leaves.
Yeah, that's when they're showing off their new airship. He's like, "You see this?
All right." Anyway, back to the story, I guess.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a big fight going on. You're not winning. So Estinian calls upon Nidhogg's stolen eye for power.
Yeah, Estinian is very don't worry, I'll just hold on to this eye for a lot of the story.
Big mistake, because as soon as he did that, Nidhogg was like, well, idiot, you've just basically given me the keys to your mind. I can be you now. I can control you. But anyway, you kill him before that happens.
That's such a good scene. The scene where he rams through Nidhogg.
Yeah, and it turns his armor permanently red as well.
I'm go on a record here. That is the coolest scene in the entirety of Final Fantasy XIV. Yeah, I actually when I watched that the first time, I actually was so excited. I was like, that is the hypest shit I've ever seen in my life. That's so metal. I love it. I loved it so much, seeing that. I haven't seen a scene since where I was like, there's loads of great hype scenes, but none to that extent where I was kind of that's so awesome.
I agree, because up until that point he had been known as the Azure Dragoon. Now he's known as the Crimson Dragoon, and people like this.
I'm happy they gave the final blow to Estinian, quote unquote.
Same.
Quote unquote final blow.
Yeah.
Obviously,
anyway,
Nidhogg works in mysterious ways. So.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, we just killed Nidhogg, right? No, you take his other eye, which gives you short vision in the past. And you kind of see that Nidhogg, well, his hands aren't exactly clean either.
I love
killed some people.
I love the flashback where he's talking to his brother and he's missing both his eyes, and he's like, "Oh mate, come on, give me one." I wish his brother went no.
His brother is pretty hesitant though. He's kind of just
he is, because he's like, "Why would I do that? You clearly wasted both of yours."
Yeah.
Such a good scene. I don't know. I love that scene because it's I just found the image funny where he's just coming with no eyes, begging his brother, okay, come on. No, but seriously, if I just had an eye, I wouldn't make this mistake again. And his brother's all right, go on. Go on, go get your vengeance. Why not? Who am I to stop you?
But I'm not sure if you remember, but this flashback shows you that Haldrith ate the dragon's eye, which cursed his lineage forever, which meant that as long as dragons are in the sky, his family has to be a dragon hunter.
Damn.
Oh no, him specifically has to be a dragon hunter until death gives him retirement.
That's a pretty cool curse to have, though.
Sure. Yeah, you'd be well, I'm not killing all the dragons because then I'm, not only am I out of a job, but I'm also dead.
I mean, that also means you only really have to hunt them when you see dragons. There's going to be days where you're not hunting them, right? And you're well, I know they exist, but I'm just going to go make a sandwich today or something. It's just so long as it's not my vicinity.
So, Nidhogg is literally dying, and he says, "Look, I'm blind. I want to see Shiva again." So you go back to Ishgard, and nothing's going right. The heretics are now attacking the city, so you've got to sort that out. And then there's some stuff happens here and there. You're kind of introduced more to the king and stuff like that. Oh yeah, Emmerich gets imprisoned at one point as well, because he gives the knights free reign to do whatever they want to find out like what's going on.
Yeah.
And then the archbishop accuses him of being like of blasphemy and treason. So like, right, you're in prison now.
Yeah. That part of the story is really good too, where you have to like go into like that whole like revolution part is like really good.
Yeah. So like you and Lucy and Horschfont go and rescue him. Then they pledge their allegiance to you, and like now you've got a squad of knights, and you've got to go and do some stuff. You go to the broom, and you find out about this leader called the Mongrel, who was they call him that because they're a mixed heritage of noble and lowborn, so illegitimate child and all that. Yeah. Do you remember like the giant like sky whale that just like is introduced right at the beginning?
The song for that, like the
yeah,
it's so good. We haven't even touched the game soundtrack.
Hey guys, all of its soundtrack is available on Spotify, Apple Music, you name it. Go and listen to it now.
If you thought 2.0's soundtrack was banging, Heavensward soundtrack's like next level good. And then not to spoil anything, but Stormblood soundtrack's even better. Like
all you have to do is click on the Heavensward album and listen to the very first song.
Yeah.
And if you don't like that song, you don't like good music.
Yeah, I mean it's like it's among like the it's like there's just soundtracks that people are like like I don't know, I never like to be this guy with music because it's subjective, but there's soundtracks there's series where it's like we've said this about like Sonic, maybe not on the podcast, but like you can say whatever one, you can show on the Sonic games, you can't say the games have bad music. If you can shit on 14 all you want, but if you say the games have bad music, what the fuck are you talking about? I'd like to listen to your fucking taste in music. It's so fantastic. If you wanted to know like straight away, there's so many Final Fantasy fans who are like, who went into 14 and wanted something among the best Final Fantasy games, it didn't get to that point straight away, but the soundtrack was immediately Final Fantasy, like Nobu Uematsu level of soundtrack, like straight away. It was like, so 2.0 soundtrack was great. Heavensward's is better. Stormblood's is better. You could make an argument for Shadowbringers soundtrack being better than Stormblood's. Like, it keeps topping itself. It's insane how good that soundtrack is. I don't know if we'll ever talk about the soundtrack again on this podcast. Maybe we will. There's some songs in Stormblood I want to bring mention to. But just to list a couple of my favorites from Heavensward, the Ishgard theme is amazing. The final boss theme of Heavensward is, it's 3.0, is the best final boss theme of all the games. I'll stand on that. It's pretty amazing. It kind of reminds me of Kingdom Hearts music, actually. Which, it goes to show also, 14 soundtracks really diverse. Like, it's mostly orchestral, right? But, like, it goes from, like, regular orchestral, kind of in that, like, modern Final Fantasy style you expect, to the Kingdom Hearts sounding one where you've got, like, choirs and stuff in it. And then you get, like, the main themes of each game, which all have, like, lyrics and stuff. And then you get to, like, the Alexander quests, which kind of go more for, like, a techno-y thing. Like, / disco. And then you get to, like, Shadowbringers soundtrack, and it's, like, whatever genre of music that is insane. It's, like, it's so diverse, and I cannot... If there's any element of Final Fantasy XIV that's a 10 on 10, it's the soundtrack. Like, for sure, it is one of the best soundtracks I've ever had the experience of pleasuring, and that's no hyperbole. It's, you'd be hard-pressed to find people. I'd want to find somebody who didn't think the soundtrack was at least good And even if you said the soundtrack was good, you're underselling how good it really is. I'm sure there's a Reddit post like, unpopular opinion, I don't like 14's soundtrack.
You're right, that is an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, not necessarily big, not every unpopular opinion's good, so... No, I will praise 14's soundtrack to the day I die. That is an amazing soundtrack. Set of songs, obviously, Heavensward has some fantastic songs. I forgot to mention, so yeah, Ishgard's theme, final boss theme of 3.0, Limitless Blue is another great song. There's so many good songs in that soundtrack that, I don't know, just listen to it. Just listen to it. That being said, it has the worst dungeon boss theme in the series, I'd say.
Agreed.
Of the set of 14s, obviously the best one is Stormblood's. But even A Realm Reborn had a better regular dungeon boss theme than... A Realm Reborn's is actually really good. It's so good they use it in cutscenes, so...
It's true, yeah.
Even to this day, you still get the one. It's really good. Anyway, enough fanboying about 14 soundtrack. Yeah, this is the most of the 4 podcasts. This is the most you're going to see me excited for 14 because I really love Heavensward.
Same. I can't wait to get back to it when I'm carrying on my New Game Plus.
So where are we with the story?
Well, I've skipped a little bit because there's a lot of just small stuff. But you're in an airship, and you got to get through this massive barrier that's surrounding Azizla. Do you remember that floating island bit in the sky where it's all stormy and stuff?
Yeah.
That's where the Alligans are. Anyway, so there's a barrier around it, and you got to get through that barrier. But unfortunately, worst timing ever, Justinian, the eye is taking over him.
Yeah.
And so Yazael's you know what? I might be the shadow of Shiva, but I'm still Shiva. So it turns into Shiva. You have a fight, and you're into Azizla. Well done, guys. Woo!
Damn.
You explore the floating islands. You find out the Alligans were here. They're the super advanced technology race from the past. They're basically the dwarves from Skyrim, where they're not around anymore, but all their technology's still there. And you're how do they do this? Yeah, and you're in. I don't remember. There's as far as I'm aware, not really much happens here. You spend all this time going to Azizla, and then only a couple of things happen. You find out about Tiamat, which is a dragon, which is I believe they're imprisoned there, and there's been 5,000 years of suffering or something.
I actually don't remember this.
It's such a small plot point there, and it comes back in Shadowbringers as well. There's where you go back to them and you're I was have we met you before? I swear we have. But they're do you remember Bahamut, the giant dragon that blew up the earth last time? Yeah, well, the Alligans, they imprisoned it for no reason, and it's just well, there's probably not no reason, but
yeah, stop blowing up our planet.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, you then hear the Ascians are back, so you go and fight Lahabrea one more time. And he's I want to resurrect Lord Zodiac, and you're uh-oh, that's bad, because Lord Zodiac is the opposite of Hydaelyn, they light and dark,
Yeah.
And then you find out the true power of the Echo, that it doesn't just give you the ability to see in time, but also break down the barriers of existence itself, and then 2 Ascians fuse together to become one giant Ascian. You're just this seems like an arse pull, Lahabrea.
Yeah, it's a very silly plot point, I'll say that.
It is, yeah. And then they also steal Nidhogg's eye and become Ascian Prime, but there's 2 of them again, and everyone's just could you stop, please?
Yeah.
But then, oh no, Archbishop's here. Guess what? I was bad all along. Thanks, Ascians. Then he dumps them.
Yeah, in the most obvious twist ever. You're just all right.
Uh-huh. And then Estinian gets fully taken over by Nidhogg, and that's pretty much the. Oh yeah, and then you fight the Archbishop. I forget that happens in 3.0. I thought that's 3.1. You kill the Archbishop, and Sir Emmerich's pretty much just like, "Hey, dragons, do you wanna not?" And the dragon's like, "Yeah, yeah, let's not do this anymore."
Admittedly, I don't love how Heavensward ends, just because if you played that at the time, you would have been annoyed that it kind of ended on a cliffhanger. Like with that Estinian thing, obviously it led to great things later, but at the time it's different. Also, we forgot to talk about the entire side quest to get your Stola back.
Oh yeah, is that not in the Point X content?
No, point oh.
What the
Like, remember, it's an entire new area.
Yeah, you're right, it is.
Yeah. The weirdest part of the entirety of Heavensward.
Yes.
Not that I was bored per se. There's nothing in Heavensward. It's the only expansion where I was like, there's not a single moment that bores me.
Okay, yeah.
But it definitely, I was kind of like, what's going on now?
Yeah, so in case you're like, because I completely forgot about this as well, but like, yeah, at one point, it's pretty much just like, it turns out that Y'shtola had used some forbidden magic and basically teleported them like into the aether, which is a very dangerous thing to do because you're not teleporting to one specific spot, you're just kind of teleporting into the world's live stream, and doing so will take a toll on your body. You basically lose something. So if I remember correctly, it was both her and Thancred went in together, and she lost her sight because of it. She's now permanently blind, so she has to use like basically like force sense to like know what's around her, and that's killing her. That's literally killing her. But she's like, I'm blind, like what else do I do? So
and then Thancred was like, I'm wearing an eye patch for no reason.
yeah, Thancred wears an eye patch, but just for that patch, he like gets rid of it like later.
Yeah, he's
on.
like, enough of this. It's like, Thancred, shut the fuck up. Why does... Okay, here's another thing. I want to go back to the whole they were written one way, etc. How come Thancred, he goes through like 4 different personalities. He goes from boring bastard in 2.0 to weirdly comical in 2.x. Like, it's really strange. And then he goes to his post Heavensward personality, which I guess you could go say he's kind of back to boring bastard, but kind of with a serious edge to him. To, admittedly, his Shadowbringer's personality, which is way more interesting than anything that came before. Of all the characters, why does he go through like such a personality shift per expansion?
I have no idea. I mean, like in 2.0 itself, he goes from boring person to basically James Bond.
Yeah, like a comic relief James Bond. He gets dumped on a lot in 2.x. To be fair, you know what? If he got dumped on throughout the entire thing and he was just like a comedy character, I would probably like Thancred a lot more. Because I remember playing that and I was like, there's some writing here where it's like, are they trying to... Is Thancred meant to be stupid? Like, is his post-Asian days left him brain dead?
Yeah.
But no, he goes back. He goes back to being what 14 considers cool for Thancred. And you know what? I know me and you are in the minority on this, or are we? A lot of people really like Thancred. Don't know what that's about, because by the time me and you hated Thancred, Shadowbringers wasn't even a thing. So what was there to like?
I don't know.
Like, as I remember, me and you both hated Ida and Thancred. So we were kind of like, we don't get why these characters are popular. But I guess there's going to be people who think that about Alphino. So, and that's a character we're both really fond of. So, and don't underplay, Alphino's a big part of this story too. Like, plot point wise, obviously he doesn't have any major moments, but like, he's contributing a lot to the story, more than maybe a plot summary would lead on. So, don't underplay Alphino either. He's really cool in this. As I said, this is probably Alphino at his best, because he's less important in future expansions, but I really like Alphino. And but yeah, Thancred came back and nothing happened to him. This is the part where we get blind Y'shtola, which is best Y'shtola. This is her personality for the rest of the series. Surprisingly, she's an interesting character. Who knew? I really like Y'shtola. She's definitely top 3 Scion for sure. I like what they do with her character also in Stormblood, for as little as she's in Stormblood, and Shadowbringers as well, I think, are both really good examples of using her. I like that she's kind of sassy. And, you know, more Y'shtola, please. She's a great character.
Agreed.
I didn't think I'd like her as much as I would, because I hate the cat people just in general. Like, I hate their aesthetic, and I hate that they're even in the game, but I ended up really liking her, so there's that. You know, I guess it was kind of the same with, like, I'd never like a Lalafell, and then, like, Papalymo and Teleji came along, and I was like, I love these characters. And don't even... Pippin, come on.
Yeah, exactly. I love Pippin.
Yeah, there was a lot of characters in 14 I didn't expect to like, which I ended up liking, but not Thancred though.
No. Can you believe that Teleji was 55 years old?
He looks good.
He looks good for 55, exactly.
Have you seen, like, Sir Emmerich's dad?
Have you seen me in my mid-20s?
I mean, I actually don't know how old Sir Emmerich's dad is. Is he, like, 300 or something? I actually don't know how old he is.
That would be funny.
He's probably, like, I don't know, in his 80s or something.
His dad's the Archbishop, right?
Yeah. That's why I keep calling him Sir Emmerich's dad.
Sir Emmerich's dad. He's 74, okay.
I thought he was, like, 200 or something.
Nah.
Okay.
Cool. If his son is like 34, like, imagine, that's a long time to leave having kids.
I thought they just aged slowly.
Do you know what?
Kind of like the Asari from Mass Effect, or most other elves in other mythologies.
Mm-hmm. Elizons live up to 120 years. Holy damn!
That's not much. Like that, I guess for an average lifespan, that's like pretty good compared to humans. But like,
yeah,
that's shorter than I expected. A few hundred at least.
Well, okay. According to this, they're here, which is like the human race. They live between 80 and 100, which is, you know, okay. Rogan, Makote, and Lalafell all live around the same. And then there's the Viera, which like the rabbit, like species. They live up to 400.
Oh. Okay. Oh, that's random.
Oh, also, like, there are some sources that say the Makote live the shortest at 50 to 60 years, so you can have that. That's a W for you.
Yeah, sure. Good. Some would say.
Anyway, 3.1. Not much happens in 3.1, if I remember correctly.
No, not really. The Nidhogg stuff doesn't get wrapped up until 3.3, right?
You do get to fight Ravana, though, which we like. We both like Ravana as a character.
Yeah, of course.
You get Kryl is like a bigger thing as well here, who we are introduced to in 3.0, but like I don't think we care that much for Kryl.
Which one is they?
That's the Lalafell.
Who cares?
Okay.
Sorry, I mean, we glossed over that death in 3.0. That's when you brought up his name. Was it Hazel something? As soon as you brought up his name, I was like, who cares? Because like they want you to be sad at his death than like it actually is.
If his death was gonna be like super sad, he should have been in it more.
He's a character since 2.0, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, but he's a background character in like 2.0.
Yeah, it's like they could have killed off a character with, like, maybe if they killed off Sir Emmerich, it would have been like way more sad.
Yeah, exactly. Because you spend like as soon as you meet Sir Emmerich, Horshafon's like, bye.
I mean, I went through that entire game just hoping Estinian didn't die. So,
Yeah, exactly.
but then again, as we know, like 14 is very loose when it wants to kill. Like it doesn't kill characters off often. Besides bad guys, usually,
Yeah.
it's very reluctant to kill good guys.
Yeah.
And even sometimes bad guys, because like as we'll talk about this, there's a bad guy in the next expansion which avoids death. Like,
Yeah.
I guess like, just cause.
Anyway, so 3.1 ends with like there's a little bit of a uprising going on, and people like Emmerich should still be executed for the crime of treason, even though the Archbishop is now like dead.
Yeah,
and
I think pretty sure there's this mini subplot where like they're getting mad at like the army, like the people are getting mad at the army, and then like an army man shoots a bow and arrow. Sorry, shoots an arrow at like an innocent person. Do you remember that?
yes, I do. That's quite like a shocking scene because it's just like
It is.
uh-oh.
It is. But thankfully, that person doesn't die. So.
But this crowd, they're very easily pleased. Do you remember? Like the small child like falls off a roof and the dragon saves him, and everyone's like, yes, yes,
Yeah, woo!
and then like everyone instantly is like, maybe dragons are not so bad.
Maybe they're not so bad.
Like you are like the easiest like crowd to please. What else happens? Oh yeah, the patch ends with you seeing like Yida and Papalymo again.
Yeah, and then everyone groaned. Okay, and is Nidhogg next, or
3.2 starts with you being like, "Yo, where's Minfilia?" So you remember the subplot where you have to go and find Minfilia's like mother figure?
Yeah.
And she's like, "I want nothing to do with you." And then you're like, "Minfilia's missing." And she's like, "Okay, go and get me some wine, then I'll come and help you."
This is definitely the most like okay who asked part of the Point X content for me. That's for sure.
This feels like 2.0 content, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, like I don't. I have not really talked about this on the podcast yet, but I think Minfilia is such a whatever character.
Sure.
And I didn't miss her, and like when she went away forever, I was kind of like, okay, cool. Like I was like, damn, they actually took a risk with like a major character in the story. I was happy with that.
Sure.
Plus, she gets replaced by a better Minfilia anyway.
Yeah, not yet.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you end up speaking to Hydaelyn directly, and whoa, Minfilia has decided to. Well, I don't actually. I'm not sure if it's clear like which way round it is, but like Hydaelyn now presents herself through Minfilia. So like whenever you talk to Hydaelyn, you're now talking to Minfilia, which is now being used as like an avatar for Hydaelyn. So, and I'm not really sure what the ramifications of this are. I'm not sure if it's like Minfilia is dead and she's just using her likeness to like speak to you, which in itself is kind of messed up, or whether Minfilia is like, maybe I should rejoin with Hydaelyn and do work with her because, you know, better together and all that. I don't think it's ever clear, but like it's kind of like you kind of damned yourself to a terrible existence if it's unwilling.
I mean, yeah, I don't really have much to say on this part. I'd say it's the weakest part of Point X for sure, for 3.x, because, which admittedly is picking out of a really good bunch, because I think 3.x is the best overall Point X content in the series from a narrative point of view. Like, from the Point 1 stuff where you have to deal with the like civilians, that part's awesome. Nidhogg's part's up next, which is awesome. Then you have the Griffin part coming up, which is also great. Like the lead into Stormblood is really good.
I agree.
I think Heavensward, yeah, it's probably my favorite Point X content of the lot because it ties up all the loose ends from Heavensward, sets up all the, including the Illbird stuff, which is awesome. You know, say what you want about the Uldar storyline being shit, which it was. The stuff they do with Illbird's really good.
Agreed.
I wish he was around longer. I love that, like, even in Stormblood we get flashbacks to him and stuff. But I'd say the closest second would be obviously I haven't done Shadowbringers Point X stuff yet, but Stormblood's Point X stuff is quite good. But I think Heavensward's Point X stuff narratively is like on another level of like great. Like there's a lot of stuff in Point X, Heavensward, that just feels like main game content to me. Like the Nidhogg storyline, like which is coming up next. But like that part, you know, I was talking about hype, obviously. My favourite scene in the series is probably when Estinian is blasting his way through Nidhogg, but my second favourite is probably, you know, the part where you're flying on the like to Nidhogg to battle him, and you do the steps towards him, and they play the Ishgard theme, but the triumphant version of it. Amazing. 10 on 10 storytelling. I love like the entire Nidhogg storyline. It's definitely the best part of 3.x for sure.
Yeah, agreed. So anyway, you go and have some dinner with Sir Emmerich, and you find out that actually like the talks between Man and Dragon, they're not going great, and then you get drugged, and people start like protesting these peace talks, saying that like, you know, the dragons are just using this as an excuse to kill us all. And then like one of their House of Fortom, which they're quite a big deal. We haven't talked about them much, but they're the family that take you in at the beginning of Heavensward, and they're like one of the leads of them tells a guard to like stop one of the protesters, and that's when someone gets shot in the chest.
Yeah,
and everyone is just like, okay, these peace talks are bad. So now
those ain't going well.
So not only are the talks not going well, like people are like, we're gonna die. This is it. We're all dead. And Sir Emmerich kind of comes to the realization that actually, like, maybe things aren't as clear cut as we think. Like, just because we think we can do it doesn't mean other people have to. And then, like, there's this weird plot point where, like, there's this huge fight that, like, happens between, like, Eorzea and Ishgard that happens every so often. And, like, that's a small plot point for some reason. That's just introduced after this massive, like, hey, one of your guards killed an innocent person.
Yeah.
Such a weird, like, change of pace. But anyway, I actually quite enjoyed that. It's quite a fun, like, thing to do. And what happens next? Oh yeah, there's another ceremony where they unveil a massive mural of Shiva and her Elsgar meeting, and that's like, that's quite nice. Maybe we will be on peace with the dragons. And an Estinian comes out, and he has the eyes of Nidhogg have like fully fused his armor, and like now he actually is Nidhogg. And he's like, right, that's it. Any peace is a farce. I'm gonna fight every last one of you, man or dragon. And it's just like,
yeah, it's metal as hell.
And then Papalymo and Ida are like, we're still here, by the way. Come back next patch. So yeah, 3.3 is pretty much just like the Nidhogg stuff. Alphino is upset because Estinian's kind of like been taken over by Nidhogg, and you do. If I remember correctly, you saw that out very early on in the patch, and then like Alphino genuinely thinks like Estinian's dead, but then like Estinian's just like, nah, I'm alive.
I mean, like when you become a dragon, like, you know, like I don't know what you expect to like think of the fate of him is.
Yeah. Then what else happens? Oh yeah, Sir Emmerich steps down as like leader of Ishgard and dissolves the Archbishop's like church pretty much. So Ishgard is no longer a church state; it's now a republic, which is cool, I guess. And then what happens next? Like nothing else really. That's the end of that batch. Nothing else happens. Oh yeah, you meet Alisaie again. Which, like, now she's actually part of the crew, which is Alphino's sister.
Yep.
And you're not a big fan of like Alisaie straight away.
No, she's annoying. I think she's the most annoying character. I think main character. It used to be Ida, but they they make Ida boring. So I guess Alizé takes that point. My issue with Alizé is that she's just annoying. Like she just in that in Heavensward and Stormblood specifically, she's not so much Shadowbringers. She kind of mellows out in Shadowbringers, but like it's like Alphino's gonna say something, and then she's like, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." It's like, what were you doing, you rude bitch? Fuck off. Like, we like Alphino now, Alizé. I don't know if you were here for his character development. She's aggressive, and that's kind of all her character is, unfortunately. And I'll have a lot to say about her in Stormblood, where she's at her worst. But yeah, again, she becomes a better character, so... It is that is kind of a theme with the characters in the story. They do become better, but no. At first, I kind of didn't mind Alice saying the small moments you've gotten before her with this, but I didn't get the impression she was a hot-headed asshole. So it wasn't until this where I was like, "Whoa, she's violent. That's a character, I guess." And it's definitely apparent when you compare her to like Alphino. So very, very interesting choice of character, I'll say. But again, I know she's popular, so I'm sure she has her fans.
Yeah.
But no, I don't really like Alice at this point. I'll rant about her more in Stormblood because she really gets under my skin in Stormblood.
Sure. Gears ground?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Fine.
I'd say so.
Fine. 3.4 starts off with Sir Emmerich actually being elected leader of the House of Lords, which, it was a post he basically stepped down from. And you go to dinner with him. Anyway, Warriors of Darkness. Hello.
That's point X as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's 3.4.
Damn. How do they knocked out of the park with every part?
Yeah. So this is where you're introduced to the idea that like the world you're on is what's known as the source, and at one point it was broken up into like different like versions of it. They're all like mirror versions of this world, and when something bad happens in that world, when that world gets destroyed, it affects the source. This is a very big thing in Shadowbringers. It is literally like the main plot of Shadowbringers, but it's introduced here where there's like, well, there's a world out there. So like, you're the warrior of light. You're fighting for like light, because darkness, if it takes over, that's bad. There's a world out there that's literally the complete opposite, that has been completely flooded by light, and these people are trying to do the opposite of you. So they've come to your world in order to stop you doing what you're doing, because the worlds kind of affect each other. And this isn't it. This is kind of like hinted at the story, and this is kind of like bringing spoilers for later on. But actually, the flood of light in the first, which is where the Warriors of Darkness are from, is actually draining the Aether out of Hydaelyn. So it is actually affecting your world too, in a negative way. So you're kind of like in this position where it's like, they're right, they are actually doing the right thing, but by letting them do what they're doing, it's going to like hurt us a lot.
Yeah, no, it's one of the most interesting plot points up until that point, because the whole hero villain dynamic gets tossed on its head, and I love that the main one of their group is the generic male avatar.
Yes,
I think that was really clever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's the one that's on the front of the box. Technically the canon protagonist of 14.
So if you played 14 as like the generic male character, you'd be like, huh? At this scene, you'd be like so confused.
It's me. Urianger was the part of their team. That's where he disappeared to.
Yeah.
What a twist, though, by the way. Can I say? That's a twist.
I actually didn't see it coming, even though I brought up a point. I was like, why the fuck does this guy speak like Urianger?
Yeah.
But like, I actually didn't see it coming, so.
It's a really weird, like, huh.
Yeah, for sure.
And Alizé, and it turns out Alizé and Urianger had been training behind everybody's back. Everyone's really strong because of all the training. Red Mage is the class Alizé picks, and a Red Mage I've heard is quite a good one. I never see it, but like...
yeah, I never see it either.
No, exactly. And then you're kind of introduced to like what the kobolds were doing. They want to bring back even stronger Titan because Elidibus is like, you should do it. It will be cool. And then yeah, this is where like you start hearing about the stuff that's going on in Little Alamigo, which is what's going on. There's a fake griffin out there, and you're like, fake griffin. This can't be good.
Yeah, it's really
It's actually
funny.
Ilberd. Ilberd's bad.
I think at this point, he's like borderline crazy.
True. I mean, like, obviously, all the Uldar stuff happened off screen. We said earlier that, like, we were upset that happened all off screen. But, like, this stuff is just, like, out of nowhere. Just, like...
Yeah, it definitely does feel
do get a
rushed
little
as
bit of an
well, to some degree. I can't... It definitely does feel rushed, and I wish it kind of got more development, but I do like the twist.
It kind of feels like Papalymo is trying to give you, like, an info dump. But it's just like, you should have showed this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good moments in Point X. Like, you could make a game in of itself of the plot points of Point X's content, 3.x's content. It's that good. Obviously, you know, it's kind of more separate. It's not telling one big story like the actual 3.0 is, but there's just so many good points in this story.
Okay. Anyway, like, there's quite a bit happens in 3.5, but if I'm gonna be honest, the only part of it that really like properly matters is like Nidhogg's eye coming back again because the Ascians have been like, hey, check this out, guys. Gives it to the Griffin. So he gives it to Ilberd, and Ilberd's like, yay, cool. Ilberd's now like, hey, maybe we should like start a war between Eorzea. It'll be funny. So at this point, like, basically they've decided that like dragons and elves handshake, we're all good now. And then Ilber's like, all right, come and fight me at Baelzar's wall. So you fight the Griffin. And then I remember he tries to summon Bahamut. And this is where Papalymo comes in and is like, I'm the only one who learned how to like contain Bahamut. So you guys leave and I'm going to die protecting you guys. And it's just like, our favourite Scion dies.
One of the great what ifs of Final Fantasy XIV, I guess, as a character. They didn't explore Papalymo enough, and there was a lot to explore with his character, and somebody at the writing team is, was bored with Papalymo, I guess. Who looks at that cast of characters when you're the worst one? Go.
Okay, I understand where you're coming from, but like, we're in the minority here. Like, a lot of people like those other characters.
Yeah, that's true. Admittedly, that is true. I guess because we're like, damn, he had a personality and the others didn't, so it's kind of like why he stood out more. But like, look, it's I don't know, the Scions don't do much for me even at this point, so it's kind of like, why wouldn't I like Papalymo the most? His character was like, shut the fuck up, Ida. That's hilarious to me because I hate Ida too, you see, so I kind of relate. But then again, at this point they also stopped saying shut the fuck up, Ida, because Ida's, when we meet Ida again, she has gone through a character shift, like the most unnatural shift in the most unnatural character shift in the entirety of Final Fantasy XIV, and I hate it. And there's no build up to it. It's the dumbest shit in the entirety of this story, and I was like, excuse me, huh? What's going on? Like, it's not explained well. They expect you to know it, and like, you, I think, were on a call with me and you basically like explained it to me whilst it was happening, because you were like, oh, they don't really say it that well. Like, and I was like, what the fuck? It's like the most, so like, Yeah, Ida's not Ida, I guess.
Yeah,
She was
now
pretending to be her sister, was it?
yeah, I pointed this out at the time, but the way the game treats it is it kind of feels like the game was expecting you to know that, and it's just like, what? How was I supposed to predict this at all? Like, as far as I'm aware, even in 1.0, like, you're not. Like, obviously, we didn't play 1.0, but from what I've heard, like, 1.0 to 2.0, they are supposed to be different people, and I'm just like, Papalymo never figured this out, or like, he did know or something. But like, why didn't he say something? Why did no one say anything? Why am I supposed to be? Because like, hey, I'm not actually Ida, and everyone just goes, "We know." It's just like, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Why did no one point this out? Unless I'm interpreting this wrong. But I went back and I've seen those scenes again, and I'm still like, no, the game like treats you as if you're supposed to know this.
Yep. And it annoys me more in hindsight because I know what it leads to. So,
Yeah.
damn, I hate this plot point with a burning passion, and it's kind of a shitty way for 3.x to kind of end on. But it sets up Stormblood well enough, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, because Ida's gonna get a big focus in Stormblood, or Lise now, as she's called. I pretended to be a dumb, moronic idiot. What? Why?
It's such a like dumb plot point. But
Yeah.
and I'm like, if there was one plot point in 14 I would change, it would be this, because not only did we lose Papalymo, we gained, like, you made a bad character worse, and it's just like, ugh.
Well, you see, you can't have Papalymo around if it's Lise, because he can't call Lise an idiot. So
Yeah,
we have to get rid of him.
He'd know what he'd be is he'd be like, Lise, you're putting me to sleep.
Yeah, exactly. I have a rant and a half prepared for the next podcast.
Oh my goodness, okay.
I like Stormblood more than 2.0, but I have more ranty material in Stormblood than I did in 2.0. Because in 2.0, I just kind of like waved off a lot of the stuff like, yeah, this shit's not for me, etc. It's going to appeal to other stuff. There's stuff in Stormblood that outright infuriates me, so I'm going to look forward to that one. Story-wise, gameplay-wise, Stormblood's like better than Heavensward for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that basically concludes 3.0, and honestly, apart from the sour ending and a few low points, Heavensward is bloody fantastic.
It really is.
Like, it's like, obviously I haven't had a huge experience of like the Final Fantasy franchise as a whole, but like, this has got to be one of the high points of the franchise.
It's definitely like main entry level, like definitely Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy IX, Final Fantasy VI level for me in terms of game quality. And you know, that's high praise coming from me because I love Final Fantasy VI, VII, and IX. They're like my three favorite Final Fantasy games, bar whatever I think of 14 as a whole. It's in there somewhere. Heavensward deserves to be talked about in the same way that some of the, you know, among the better mainline entries, and it really shouldn't be slept on. And it's weird because I see a lot of people oversimplify Heavensward's story, and don't get me wrong, at the end of the day, yes, Heavensward's story is go defeat the bad guys, whatever. But like, it's more about the little moments that make up that big story, I think. And like, there's so many great plot points, and it really does belong in the better end of the Final Fantasy series. It's one of the best Final Fantasy stories. It's my personal favorite of the 4 expansions. I'll say this now. I know people prefer Shadowbringers, and rightfully so, I guess. But I was never bored during Heavensward, beginning to end. I loved the entire journey. It was the last time I saw Final Fantasy XIV, as I said, as like this big open world before I started getting more cynical, and it was kind of like, oh, they're segregated areas. The Aether currents, which we haven't really talked about because this introduced mounts, like the flying mounts, didn't really bother me too much in Heavensward. Like it would go on to bother me in Stormblood. I think Heavensward's pretty close to perfect as 14 gets, and I would recommend everyone play it. And yeah, it is like I am going to be one of those people. Play 2.0 so that you can get to Heavensward, because Heavensward is really, really good, and I can't overstate how good it is. I know people have their opinions, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that's like Heavensward's not so good. I read something on the internet where like Final Fantasy XIV doesn't reach its true potential until Shadowbringers, which is one hell of an opinion.
I do not agree with that. So
Yeah, I don't either. But
like, okay, no,
yeah.
I'm gonna like obviously I love Heavensward. I okay, spoilers, but like I have always been under the impression that like it doesn't matter what order you put the expansions in, because I love them all pretty much equally. So if Stormblood's your favorite, Heavensward's your least favorite, that's fine as long as they're all above 2.0. Because like as much as I like 2.0, it's definitely the weakest of them all. I do not care what order you put those like expansions in, because they are all good. There's not a single bad expansion in my opinion. Shadowbringers is my favorite. I tend to like, for me, just because like the 4.x content is so good, like they tend to get like, so like Heavensward is probably my least favorite expansion, then Stormblood, and then like Shadowbringers being my favorite. But I love them all. They're all brilliant. Like it's one of those ones where like if Shadowbringers is a 10, then like Heavensward is like a 9.8 or something.
I could definitely respect that, I think. But I'd say Stormblood's my obvious least favourite of those three.
Which is fine, because like I know some of Stormblood like isn't for everybody. We'll go more in depth on that later.
Yeah, Stormblood does quite a bit that grinds my gears. And it's not, I'll get more into that later. But I still really enjoy Stormblood.
But I also
I haven't.
sorry.
So I was just going to say I haven't really disliked an expansion, which I guess is the important takeaway from this retrospective.
But I like, before people like start getting mad, like, oh, you like Stormblood more than Heavensward, like that was when I was at my peak, like Final Fantasy XIV. That's when I was like at my most like interested in the game. That's when I got the most into the community and all that. That was the one and only time I ever got into like the high level raiding. It's like I was just like fully enriched in 14, and I'm like, you know what? Stormblood has a lot going for it in terms of like optional content, which I think a lot of people, it is the consensus that like Heavensward is some of the weaker optional content. But Stormblood's like optional like
Stormblood's optional content blows Heavensward's out of the water.
That like, the raids where you go back and fight the old bosses, like that is some like incredible stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I've never had an issue with Stormblood gameplay wise. I think it's the best of the four, actually, including Shadowbringers. I think Stormblood is mechanically the best of the four. I think it has. I mean, I haven't played Shadowbringers optional content yet, but I doubt it will top it, because Stormblood really set the bar for great additional content. All my issues with Stormblood is all narrative.
Sure.
So, kind of like 2.0.
I agree. So anyway, yeah, I guess we should wrap up this Heavensward podcast. Thank you very much for listening. We both really like 3.0.
3.0 and 3.x. Don't forget 3.x.
Yeah, 3.0
is great too.
3.x. We both love it. It's fantastic. Now, if you are a free trial player, I'm afraid to say this is where the journey ends for you. There's still a lot of content that you've had for free. If you're interested in carrying on, definitely do so. If you're not on the fence about it, then we're going to be talking a bit more about Stormblood next time. There might be some spoilers. Well, there's definitely going to be some spoilers. And we're going to be going into just what are our thoughts in probably one of the most divisive expansions. I think consensus is people still like it, but some people see it as not as good as Heavensward, some people see it as better than. So yeah, join us next time for our 3rd out of 4.
It's gonna be interesting, so stay around for it.
See you next time. Don't forget to click here for more podcasts, click here to find us on iTunes, and don't forget we're on Discord, and you can drop us an email, podcast@drearymiddle.com. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.